I said I feel invincible. It's 100 niggas in the
It's
spot. I won't walk through 'em. It's 85 just to walk through 'em. I don't talk to these niggas, cause a lot of these niggas be corny. I'm feeling horny, and I shoot like Robert Horry. I'm on this percolated shit. I got a percolated bitch. I give it this.
Yo, what's up you guys? Welcome back to Second Take. It's Vishwa here, and today I'm going to be breaking down if this new Brooklyn Nets team can win the championship this year and how they can, as well as discuss the huge question marks. Guys, it's finally happened. The dream team of James Harden joining forces with the Brooklyn Nets featuring stars Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving has finally happened after all the rumors and reports and all the disappointment Harden created in Houston. Now it's safe to say that this team is easily winning the ring after the acquisition of Harden, except is it? That's where in today's video I'm going to be discussing the truth. Does acquiring James Harden finally make the Brooklyn Nets team a championship lock? And before we get into answering the question, please make sure to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. I promise you will not regret it at all, and let's get straight into the video. When you look at this new Nets team, it looks absolutely stacked with their three-headed monster that they have now. I'm not going to discuss too much in depth about these three superstars, as I have already done that in previous videos, and I did that in the video where I talked about why the Nets led by KD and Kyrie can dethrone the Lakers, given the fact that, of course, Kyrie Irving actually decides to get off of his break and actually play the game of basketball. And I detailed both of these guys in detail, but to keep it brief for those who don't know, Kyrie Irving is obviously the greatest dribbler of all time and perhaps one of the most skilled players in today's game, with his crafty handles, smooth and automatic pull-up jump shot, and a really underrated playmaker. He's just a flashy all-around player who's extremely fun to watch. Kevin Durant, on the other hand, is definitely the greatest scorer of all time and also the most unguardable player in the league, while being able to pretty much do anything on the court, as Steve Nash even said in the past that he can play him at all 5 positions and he can shoot it, drive, finish under contact, post up, defend, and he's a great playmaker as well. Finally, we get to James Harden, who was a 2018 MVP and 8-time All-Star, and he absolutely carried the Houston Rockets throughout his career. I mean, I don't know why Rockets fans can be that disappointed and disgusted in him, as Harden pretty much did so much for the organization. I mean, besides winning the MVP, he led the Rockets to deep playoff runs throughout his career, and it was clear that he was at least trying to do his best. The whole offense revolved around him, ISOing, playmaking, and the organization would also do everything for him, such as surrounding him with a good backcourt mate like Russell Westbrook or Chris Paul, a lot of shooters like Ben McLemore, Gerald Green, Eric Gordon, and others. But as we all know, through so much evidence, Harden was clearly not happy in Houston at all due to numerous reasons. A lot of it does go on the organization for not surrounding the best possible supporting cast for him, but there are so many experts and sources that say that Harden's playstyle is simply not suited to win a ring. For example, teammates criticized him among many others, most likely for playing too selfishly. But anyway, it came from the start of the season that Harden reportedly wanted out of Houston and declined a historically huge $50 million option, but the team wasn't able to find a suitable trade partner for Harden, as teams rumored to have interest either didn't actually have interest or didn't want to give up the pieces Houston asked for. And for example, Denver refused to give up Jamal Murray, Miami wasn't that interested, and they also wanted to keep Tyler Hero and their young guys, as reportedly Houston was asking for Tyler Hero, the sharpshooter Duncan Robinson, the rookie Precious Achiuwa, and multiple first-round picks and pick swaps, and this was simply impossible for the Heat. Philadelphia was also unwilling to give up Ben Simmons and Tyrese Maxey at the time, while even the Nets were refusing to give up Kyrie and KD in a trade for Harden. But as we see, Harden's first actions portrayed him in need of a trade, such as declining that much money because he didn't like the environment he was surrounded by. Also, Harden was seen at many strip clubs, and as we see him right now, it looks like he's put on a good amount of weight. He didn't want to come to practice at all because he wasn't interested in playing for the team. Hell, even a commentator had the audacity to mock him for eating a pregame meal before a game. Finally, Harden never showed up to practice simply because he didn't want to be in Houston. His recent comments on Houston detailed that Houston has a big problem that he just doesn't know can be fixed. He also stated that the team is lacking chemistry, talent, and is simply not good enough. And DeMarcus Cousins, the big man of the Rockets, also stated that Harden was really disrespectful to all of his teammates in the locker room, and it showed that he just wasn't interested in the team at all. In the game featuring the Lakers blowing out Houston, you could also pretty much see that the team had no chemistry, no defense, and the team simply had no effort at all. And it was pretty obvious Harden was a big problem, as not only as his stat lines looked terrible throughout the year, but he only managed to put up 16 points, 7 boards, and 6 dimes, unlike his usual play, on a horrendous 5 of 16 shooting. He simply just didn't want to be out here. But if you watch Harden's recent interviews, he definitely seems like he's excited to be in Brooklyn, and the superstars are unselfish, which is a bit questionable, and said that unlike Houston, the Nets actually have a legitimate chance at a ring. But as we all know, Harden has also played with Kevin Durant on the Thunder in the past. That shows a lot of promise, and he is looking for the whole team to progress, not just the big three. So now you guys know how much Harden hated it in Houston and how much he's gonna love it in Brooklyn. But now we'll discuss the new Nets roster as a whole and how things are gonna work. If you guys noticed, the Rockets were so desperate to trade Harden that they ended up being fine with not even receiving KD or Kyrie in a return package, but instead featured them receiving Karis LeVert and 4 first-round picks, one of them being from the Cleveland Cavaliers as part of a 3-team trade, and 4 pick swaps as well. The Cavaliers also ended up receiving Jarrett Allen, the big man, and forward Taurean Prince. As many of you guys know, LeVert was soon traded to the Indiana Pacers in a deal for former All-Star Victor Oladipo. We'll have another video detailing an in-depth analysis for both those teams in the trade, as well as how it impacts the futures of LeVert and Oladipo, and a brief analysis on Jarrett Allen's future with the Cavs. But anyway, today's video is solely focused on the Brooklyn Nets, and I think the only losers from this trade were the Nets themselves, as they simply gave up too much as a part of this deal, taking a risk on having 3 ISO primary players that could be a boom or a bust project. The Rockets, Cavs, and the Pacers are clearly winners of this trade in my opinion, as the Rockets got so much out of it with multiple first rounders, pick swaps, and a former All-Star shooting guard, Victor Oladipo, to pair up next to John Wall, all the while fixing their team chemistry. The Pacers get Karis LeVert, who definitely seems primed to break out, while the Cavs get both a franchise center in Jarrett Allen and a solid 3-and-D player in Taurean Prince. I do see both the Nets, Cavs, and the Rockets and the Pacers gaining a lot out of the trade, and even though the Nets did give up a lot with LeVert transforming into an all-star caliber player, as if he was on a bad team, he would be producing star caliber stats, Jarrett Allen has proved himself to be one of the best rim protectors in the game, and they gave up 3 additional first rounders that can be used to build on their roster, featuring John Wall, Christian Wood, Boogie Cousins, and others. I was honestly really surprised about the Nets giving up LeVert, given how dominant he was through the first 10 or so games. They obviously lose a lot in him, as LeVert is 6'6" that can play multiple positions 1 through 3 with such a talented offensive game, scoring and playmaking, as well as being a great two-way player. Jarrett Allen was also going on, and he took a lot of minutes from the veteran big man DeAndre Jordan, and they lose a lot of when talking about defense and controlling the paint, which I'm going to talk about later. And now I'm going to be talking about the new overall roster and how it's going to play out for the Nets. What you would normally envision the Nets starting lineup to look like would be Kyrie Irving at the 1, assuming he's actually willing to play, Harden at the 2, Joe Harris at the 3, Kevin Durant at the 4, and DeAndre Jordan at the 5. However, there are 3 big problems that stand out in this lineup, the most obvious one being the lack of good chemistry, as most would assume, as all 3 of the superstars are known for being ISO dependent players. Kyrie, I will say, has the most experience playing off the ball, same with KD, as in Brooklyn's first few games, Kyrie was playing more off ball as a 2 guard, while Spencer Dinwiddie would play the 1. As for KD, he can also play a little bit off ball as he did with Golden State, but he's the guy that has to be ISOing as he's the best player on the team, and the Nets should rely him the most for the offense. Finally, as for Harden, I don't remember the last time Harden consistently played off ball, as all throughout his career, he's always had the ball in his hands, dribbling at his will. Coach Steve Nash is definitely going to have to find some sort of method so that these 3 guys can gel together well and incorporate the other role players in the scheme as well. Many of you guys definitely disagree, but Nash could even go as far as having Kyrie or Harden on the bench to facilitate the second unit if the chemistry in the starting unit doesn't work out well. As Charles Barkley would put it, Kevin Durant went from the Splash Brothers to the Dribbling Brothers, which isn't exactly ideal given the fact that there's only 1 ball on the court. Either way, though the superstar lineup looks dominant on paper, none of it matters if the team isn't able to win games. For example, Philadelphia's lineup about 2 years ago was supposed to win a chip, as they had a star-studded lineup of Ben Simmons, JJ Redick, Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid, but as we all know, the team didn't have as much success as many hoped they'd achieve. Similarly, this new Nets team is definitely going to have to find the best chemistry possible if they are to defeat the Lakers with both the talent and the chemistry. The second big question mark about this trade is the lack of any bench power, especially with Spencer Dinwiddie tearing his ACL in the start of the season, no one's there to lead the second unit. LeVert was a beast with the second unit, and giving him up was a huge blow in that area. Taurean Prince was also a solid 3-and-D wing on the bench that could also play the 4 as well, and they lost Jarrett Allen as well, who played off the bench in the beginning of the season. If you take a look at the roster with the starting lineup I just mentioned, the bench looks something like Chris Chiozza, Timothé Luwawu-Cabarrot, Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, Landry Shamet, Reggie Perry, and Wilson Chandler, who is currently still suspended. All of these guys no doubt are excellent in their own ways, but they're all role players who aren't the best at creating their own offense. The only way I see the bench being useful is if, like I said, Nash brings Harden or Kyrie off the bench, which is definitely highly unlikely, but I can also see him staggering the superstars in different times of the game, similar to what the Boston Celtics are doing with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. This seems more likely as a good option. The roster does consist of solid floor spacers like Joe Harris, TLC, Shamet, and Chiozza, with Jordan, Green, and Chandler providing veteran experience and defense, but Steve Nash is still going to have to be very smart when managing the rotations and the minutes each guy gets and the lineup combinations as well. Finally, the last area of concern is defense. The common saying goes, defense wins championships, but it doesn't seem like the Nets have much of that right now. The Nets currently rank 22nd in opposing teams' points per game and defensive rating, which is already not the best as it's in the bottom chart of the league, but losing Jarrett Allen, who is a beast of a shot blocker, and LeVert, who is a solid wing defender, is very detrimental to the team as well. Taurean Prince was also a very reliable defender in the second unit. DeAndre Jordan, though he may be an excellent shot blocker, he has deteriorated in the past few years and is aging in the process. The second unit is also not going to have that much defense, as well as I foresee Jeff Green playing the 5, and he's both undersized and there's simply no rim protection at all, and star bigmen will be feasting on the paint against the Nets. Hopefully Nash once again can find some way to hide these issues, as right now there seems to be a lot of heavy burden and pressure for him to win the chip this year, especially when you have 3 of the best players in the game. Overall, I can definitely foresee the Nets making the finals and perhaps dethroning the Lakers with the addition of former MVP James Harden, but only if the flaws of the lack of chemistry, defense, and bench presence can be improved in the process. And we could all be up for a shock and see this team similar to the 76ers squad I mentioned earlier and be a bust of a project, and a lot of hate is going to come on Steve Nash and the 3 superstars for this. And overall, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what's going to happen. That's going to wrap it up for today's video. I personally am very excited to see how this new Nets team is going to perform for the rest of the season. Let us know your thoughts down below. Do you see the Nets winning the chip this year or disappointing and being a bust? Also, let us know your thoughts on the overall trades that have happened, and if you have any other ideas you'd like to see us present, please smash that like button if you enjoyed today's video. Other than that, thank you guys for watching and peace.